Joseph Lakewood sat at his desk in the spare bedroom of their modest ranch house, watching lines of code scroll across his monitor. Outside, Boise's October wind rattled the windows. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of his computer and the distant sound of Sloane's voice drifting from the kitchen. "No, Mom, he's still just sitting in there," Sloane said into her phone. "All day, every day. I don't know what he does." Joseph's fingers moved across the keyboard without pause. He was reviewing licensing agreements for his proprietary logistics software code that companies paid hundreds of thousands to use. Last year's revenue had hit $750,000. Clean profit, no debt. But Sloane saw only a man in an old t-shirt working from a spare room. "I'm carrying this marriage," her voice rose. "He's just there." Joseph saved his work and leaned back in his chair. 5 years of marriage, and she still didn't understand. He tried explaining his business once, early on. Her eyes had glazed over when he mentioned software licensing. She'd changed the subject to her friend's new BMW. The kitchen door slammed. Sloane appeared in the doorway, her work clothes wrinkled from a long day at the insurance office. "Are you seriously still at that computer?" She crossed her arms. "It's 7 o'clock. Joseph turned to face her. "Just finished." "Finished what?" "Playing games." She stepped into the room, scanning the monitors. "This is pathetic, Joseph. My friends ask what my husband does, and I have to make something up. You could tell them I run a software company." Sloane laughed, the sound sharp. "Right. A software company. From our spare bedroom. With what employees? What office?" Joseph stood and walked to the window. The neighbor across the street was washing his truck, a massive Ford F-350 with chrome details. "Tanner got promoted again," Sloane continued. "Regional manager. He bought his wife that Lexus for her birthday. You know what you got me? A gift card to Target. You said you wanted something practical. I was being polite." She moved closer, and he caught her perfume, something new, expensive. "When was the last time you took initiative? Made a plan? Surprised me with anything?" Joseph watched the neighbor polish his chrome bumper. The man worked construction, pulled in maybe $60,000 a year before taxes. The truck payment probably ate half his take-home. "What kind of surprise did you have in mind?" "I don't know. Anything that shows you care about our future. About me." Her voice cracked slightly. "Sometimes I feel invisible to you." He turned from a window. Sloane stood with her shoulders tight, mascara smudged under her eyes. For a moment, she looked like the woman he'd married, uncertain, hoping for something better. "I see you," he said quietly. "No, you don't. You see someone to cook dinner and share the bills. That's not a wife, Joseph. That's a roommate." She left him standing there. A few minutes later, he heard her on the phone again, voice lowered but still audible through the thin walls. "I can't keep doing this, December. He has no ambition, no drive. I feel like I'm wasting my life." Joseph returned to his desk. On his screen, an email waited from a shipping company in Portland. They wanted to expand their licensing agreement. Another 100,000 in annual revenue. He replied with his standard terms, then opened a new document and began typing notes. Sloane didn't know about his business because he'd learned to keep quiet about success. His father had taught him that lesson early: flash your money, and people see you differently. They want something from you. They resent you. Or worse, they try to take it. His software handled logistics for agricultural companies, shipping firms, and increasingly government contracts. The code was elegant, efficient, and proprietary. Companies saved millions using his systems. They paid him a fraction of that in licensing fees and called a bargain. But to Sloane, he was just a man in sweatpants who worked from home. The front door opened and closed. Sloane called out that she was going to dinner with friends from work. Joseph heard her car pull out of the driveway. He worked until midnight, then made a sandwich and went to be ED. In the morning, Sloane was already gone. A note on the kitchen counter said she'd be late, team building event. Joseph poured coffee and checked his email. 3 new inquiries, 2 contract renewals, and a message from Lena Vu, his business partner in Seattle. Revenue projection for Q4 looking strong. "We should discuss expansion plans. When can you call?" Joseph smiled. Lena understood the business in ways Sloane never would. She saw the potential, the scalability, the quiet power of owning something valuable that others needed. He spent the morning on calls with clients, the afternoon refining code. At 6, Sloan came home carrying shopping bags. Retail therapy, she announced, pulling out a new dress. Nordstrom was having a sale. How much of a sale? Does it matter? I work too. I contribute. She held the dress against herself in the hallway mirror. Declan thinks I should treat myself better. Declan. He was at lunch with our group. You remember Declan, your old friend? He said I deserve nice things. That any man should want to spoil his wife. Joseph nodded. He remembered Declan Rhodes from college. Loud, confident, always trying to impress. They'd lost touch after graduation, reconnected a few years ago when Declan moved to Boise for work. Declan's doing well, Sloan continued. Business consulting. He travels all over for clients. Makes good money. Good for him. He's taking me to lunch next week. Just as friends, of course. But it's nice to have someone to talk to who understands ambition. That night, Joseph lay awake listening to Sloane's breathing. She faced away from him, curled toward the edge of the mattress. The distance between them felt measured in more than inches. The lunch meetings became regular. Twice a week, then 3 times. Sloane started dressing better for work, buying new clothes she couldn't afford on her insurance office salary. She talked about Declan constantly, his success, his stories from business trips, his advice about her career. Joseph said nothing. He watched and listened out on a Thursday in November. Sloane announced she'd be in Seattle for the weekend. We're at conference, she said, not meeting his eyes. Last-minute thing. The company's paying for it. What kind of conference? Insurance industry trends. Boring stuff. She packed quickly, throwing clothes into her overnight bag without her usual care. After she left, Joseph called her office. The receptionist told him no one from their branch was attending any conference in Seattle. Joseph sat in his home office for a long time, staring at his reflection in the black computer screen. He felt something cold settle in his chest, not surprise, not heartbreak. Recognition. He turned on his computer and began making copies. Every email Sloane had sent from their shared laptop. Screenshots of her social media, her text messages from the phone bill. He printed bank statements showing her recent spending. The new clothes, expensive dinners charged to her credit card on days when she claimed to be working late. On Sunday, Sloane returned from Seattle flushed and happy. She talked about the conference sessions, the networking opportunities, the beautiful hotel downtown. Joseph nodded and asked simple questions. Where did you stay? Who did you meet? What did you learn? Her answers were vague, contradictory. She couldn't remember the hotel name. The sessions were general information. She hadn't kept any business cards. That evening, while Sloane showered, Joseph found the receipt in her purse. The Fairmont Olympic Hotel, Seattle. One night, 2 guests. Paid for by Declan Rhodes. Joseph photographed the receipt, then put it back exactly where he'd found it. The next morning, he called a lawyer in Boise. Margaret Shun had handled his business incorporation and contracts. She was thorough, discreet, and expensive. I need advice about divorce proceedings, he said. Hypothetically. Margaret's voice was neutral. What's the situation? Joseph explained without emotion. The affair, the deception, the prenuptial agreement they'd signed 5 years ago. Margaret listened, asking sharp questions about documentation, assets, and timing. The prenup is solid, she said finally, especially if you can prove adultery. In Idaho, that voids spousal support claims. But you'll need ironclad evidence. I'm working on that. Joseph. Margaret's voice softened slightly. Are you sure about this? Marriage counseling might be an option. No, Joseph said. It's not. He hung up and returned to his routine. Work, quiet dinners with Sloane, careful observation. She continued her Seattle trips, her lunches with Declan, her complaints about Joseph's lack of ambition. He documented everything. In December, Sloane started staying out later. Holiday parties, she explained. Networking. She bought new jewelry, charged expensive dinners to credit cards she'd never used before. Declan called the house one evening when Sloane was out. Joseph answered. Hey, buddy. Declan's voice boomed through the phone. How's the software business? Fine. Sloane says you're doing well. Good for you, man. I always knew you were smart. Declan's tone carried condescension. Listen, is she around? We were supposed to discuss some career advice. She's not here. Oh, well, tell her I called. We should all get together soon. Like old times. Joseph hung up without responding. That night, he opened a new document on his computer and began typing. A timeline of Sloane's affair, organized by date and supported by evidence. Bank statements, phone records, receipts, and photographs. Everything documented with legal precision that he felt no anger, no betrayal. Just cold clarity. Sloane had made her choice. Now he would make his. The next evening, she came home late again, humming softly to herself. She'd changed her perfume, her hairstyle, even her posture. She moved with new confidence, as if she'd found something she'd been missing. Good day, Joseph asked. The best, she said, smiling. Things are finally looking up. Joseph nodded and returned to his computer. He had calls to make, papers to file. The machinery of consequence was already turning. The confrontation came on New Year's Eve. Joseph was in his office when he heard Sloane's car in the driveway. She'd been gone since morning another work event that didn't exist. Through the window, he watched her sit in the car for several minutes, checking her phone, fixing her makeup in the rearview mirror. When she finally came inside, her eyes were bright with decision. We need to talk. She stood in the doorway of his office, arms crossed. About our marriage. Joseph saved his work and turned to face her. All right, I can't do this anymore. Her voice was steady, rehearsed. I've been thinking about what I want from life. From a relationship. And this isn't it. What do you want? A partner. Someone with goals, ambition, who challenges me to be better. She stepped into the room. You're a good person, Joseph. But you're not the right person for me. Joseph leaned back in his chair. So what are you saying? I'm saying I want a divorce. The words hung in the air. Sloane watched his face, perhaps expecting shock, anger, pleading. Joseph felt only relief. Is there someone else? He asked as Sloane's cheek twitched. This isn't about another person. It's about us. About what we've become. Who is it? Joseph, don't make this harder than it has to be. He stood and walked to his filing cabinet, pulled out a folder. Inside were printed emails, bank statements, hotel receipts. He handed her the photograph of Declan's credit card receipt from the Fairmont Olympic. Sloane's face went pale. You went through my purse. You left it on the counter. The receipt fell out. You had no right to notice my wife was lying to me. Joseph's voice remained calm. To document that you've been spending money we don't have on a man who isn't your husband? Sloane stepped backward. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. Joseph returned to his desk. You want a divorce? Fine. I'll have papers drawn up tomorrow. What? You heard me. I'll file first thing in the morning. Sloane stared at him. Just like that. Just like that. Don't you care at all? Don't you want to fight for us? Joseph met her eyes. There's nothing left to fight for. She stood there for a long moment, mouth opening and closing. This wasn't the reaction she'd expected. She'd prepared for arguments, for pleading, for drama. His calm acceptance threw her off balance. Fine, she said finally, but I'm not walking away with nothing. I supported this household while you played computer games. I deserve half of whatever you've saved. Actually, you don't. What do you mean? Joseph pulled another document from the folder. Remember the prenuptial agreement you signed? Sloane's face flushed. That was just paperwork. Your lawyer said it was standard. It was standard, including the infidelity clause. Joseph read from the document. In the event of proven adultery by either party, the unfaithful spouse forfeits all claims to spousal support, property division, and future income. You can't prove anything. Joseph tapped the hotel receipt. I can prove enough. Sloane grabbed the receipt, crumpled it. This doesn't prove adultery. It proves I stayed in a hotel with Declan Rhodes, who paid for the room. Well, you told me you were at a work conference that didn't exist. Joseph's voice remained level. I have 6 months of documentation, Sloane. Bank records, phone bills, witness statements. Your own co-workers know you've been lying about these trips. She threw the crumpled receipt at him. You bastard. You've been planning this. No, you've been planning this. I've been preparing for it. Sloane stormed toward the door, then spun back. You think you're so smart. You think you have it all figured out, but you don't know what you're losing. I know exactly what I'm losing. I'm the best thing that ever happened to you. I'm the only woman who would put up with your boring, pathetic life. You'll never find anyone else. Joseph turned back to his computer. We'll see. Look at me when I'm talking to you. He didn't turn around. After a moment, he heard her leave, slamming the front door behind her. Joseph sat in the silence for a long time. Then he picked up his phone and called Margaret Chin's emergency number. It's time to file, he said when she answered. Tonight, first thing tomorrow morning. I want her served before she has time to think. Joseph, are you certain about this? Once we file, there's no going back. I've never been more certain about anything. All right, I'll have the papers ready by 9 a.m. Joseph hung up and returned to his computer. He opened his email and began typing a message to Lena Vu, ready to discuss that expansion. When can we meet in Seattle? He hit send and leaned back in his chair. Outside, fireworks exploded across Boise's sky, welcoming the new year. Joseph watched the colors bloom and fade against the darkness. His old life was ending. His real life was about to begin as Seattle's March rain drummed against the windows of Joseph's new apartment. He'd chosen the place deliberately modest, unremarkable, in a neighborhood where software engineers lived quietly among baristas and graduate students. Nothing about the space suggested he could afford better. The divorce had been swift and brutal. Sloan fought every detail, hired an expensive lawyer, and leaked stories to mutual friends about Joseph's controlling behavior. But Margaret Chin had been thorough. The prenup held. The documentation was overwhelming. 3 months after filing, Joseph walked away with everything he'd built and no obligation to the woman who'd shared his bed for 5 years. Now he sat at a standing desk in his apartment's main room, managing an empire that existed mostly in contracts and bank accounts. His phone buzzed with a call from Lena Vu. Revenue for last quarter hit $900,000, Lena said without preamble. The agriculture contracts alone are worth $500,000 annually now. Joseph opened a spreadsheet on his second monitor. What about the government inquiries? 3 agencies want meetings. Defense Logistics, USDA Supply Chain Management, and something hush-hush from Homeland Security. I'm vetting them now. Carefully. Always. Lena's voice carried a smile. You know, you could buy a proper office. Maybe hire some employees who aren't named Lena Vu. Why fix what's not broken? Because you're leaving money on the table. We could scale this 10 times over with the right infrastructure. Joseph looked out at the Seattle skyline, gray and indistinct through the rain. Set up a meeting for next week. I'll drive down. I'll fly up. You need to see what I'm building here. 2 days later, Joseph walked through Lena's operation in a converted warehouse south of Pioneer Square. She'd hired 6 developers, 2 project managers, and a lawyer who specialized in intellectual property. Clean desks, multiple monitors, the quiet hum of serious work being done. My God, Joseph said softly. Surprised, Lena guided him through the space. This is what scaling looks like. We're handling implementation for all the major clients now, not just licensing the code. Support contracts, custom modifications, ongoing development. She led him to a conference room where spreadsheets covered a whiteboard. Revenue projections climbed steadily upward. Conservative estimates put next year's income at $2 million. Aggressive growth could triple that. What's our biggest risk? Joseph asked. You, Lena said bluntly. Everything flows through your original code. If something happens to you, or if you decide you want out, this whole operation collapses. Joseph studied the projections. What do you recommend? Formal partnership structure. Legal protections for both of us. And we need to start thinking like a real company, not a side project. They spent 3 hours restructuring everything. Joseph would maintain majority ownership and final decision authority, but Lena would run day-to-day operations. They'd establish proper corporate entities, offshore protections, and employment contracts that would survive any personal catastrophes. What about salary? Lena asked. What do you think is fair? I'm thinking $200,000 base plus equity stakes. She paused. For you, we should probably structure it around $1,200,000 annually, with the rest flowing through various corporate entities for tax purposes. Joseph felt something shift in his chest. He'd gone from a man his wife thought was worthless to someone earning more than most doctors, lawyers, and executives. And it was still just the beginning. Agreed, he said. That evening, Lena took him to dinner at a restaurant overlooking Elliott Bay. They sat near the window, watching ferries move across the dark water. "Can I ask you something personal?" Lena said over wine. "Shoot, what happened to your marriage? You've never talked about it." Joseph cut his steak methodically. "My ex-wife thought I lacked ambition." "She thought you lacked ambition." Lena laughed. "Did she know what you were building?" "She never asked the right questions." "Her loss." "Yes," Joseph said simply. "It was." They discussed expansion plans over dessert. International licensing opportunities, partnerships with logistics companies in Asia, potential acquisitions of smaller competitors. Joseph found himself thinking in larger scales, longer timelines. This wasn't just a business anymore, it was a foundation for everything that would come after. When he returned to his apartment, Joseph opened his laptop and began researching Seattle real estate. Not for anything flashy, but something better. A house with a proper office, maybe a view of the water. He could afford it now. More importantly, he was ready for it. Joseph's phone rang at 7 in the morning, 3 weeks later. Sloane's number. He let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message while making coffee. "Joseph, we need to talk. I know you're in Seattle now. I have things to say to you, and you're going to listen to them." He deleted the message and went to work. An hour later, another call. This time he answered. "What do you want, Sloane? I want to know why you're hiding from me." "I'm not hiding. I moved." People do that after they get divorced. People also don't disappear completely. Your neighbors in Boise said you packed everything and left without telling anyone where you were going. Joseph opened his laptop and checked email while she talked. 2 new client inquiries, a contract renewal worth 6 figures, and a message from Lena about their meeting with a potential government contractor. "Are you listening to me?" Sloane's voice rose. "I'm listening. I found out about your company." Joseph stopped typing. "What company?" "Don't play dumb." "LNL IP Holdings. I hired an investigator." "You've been lying to me for years about what you do." "I never lied about anything. You let me think you were some kind of loser working from home for peanuts. Meanwhile, you're making real money. Serious money. What I made was my business. I was your wife. Your finances were my business too." Joseph poured coffee and carried it to his window. Below, morning commuters hurried through the drizzle toward downtown offices. Normal people with normal problems. "Not according to the prenup you signed," he said. "That prenup was fraud. You didn't disclose your real income." "I disclosed exactly what the law required." Sloane's breathing was sharp through the phone. "I'm going to fight this. I'm going to get what I'm owed." "You were owed fidelity. You were owed honesty. You gave me neither. I made a mistake. You made a choice. Multiple choices. Over months. People change, Joseph. People grow apart. That doesn't mean I should lose everything." "You didn't lose everything. You lost me." The line went quiet for a long moment. When Sloane spoke again, her voice was smaller. "I know I hurt you. I know I handled things badly. But 5 years of marriage has to count for something." Joseph watched a delivery truck navigate the narrow street below. The driver was careful, methodical, checking his mirrors before every turn. Professional competence applied to a simple task. "It counted," Joseph said. "It counted enough that I didn't contest the divorce publicly. I didn't air your business to our friends or your family. I handled it quietly and let you keep your dignity." "My dignity?" Sloane's voice cracked. "Do you know what people are saying about me? That I cheated on my husband and lost everything? That I'm living paycheck to paycheck while you're running some secret empire? Are those things untrue? You're a bastard." "Maybe, but I'm an honest bastard." Joseph hung up and turned off his phone. He had work to do. That afternoon, Lena called from the office. "We have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "Someone's been asking questions about our corporate structure. Called 3 of our clients yesterday, claiming to represent a former partner who was owed compensation." Joseph felt ice in his chest. "Former partner?" Female voice. Said she was entitled to a percentage of all contracts signed before 2024. Obviously complete nonsense, but it spooked the client at Meridian Shipping. "How spooked?" "They want a meeting to discuss it." They're worried about getting caught in legal crossfire. Joseph closed his laptop. I'll be there in an hour. The meeting with Meridian's legal team took 3 hours. Joseph and Lena presented documentation proving that L&L IP Holdings had always been wholly owned by its current partners, with no outside claims or obligations. The Meridian lawyers were satisfied, but the damage was done. Word would spread that there were questions about the company's legal standing. She can't win this, Lena said afterward as they walked back to her office. But she can make us look unstable. Clients don't like uncertain. What's our exposure? Short term? Maybe a few $100,000 in delayed contracts while people wait to see how this plays out. Long term? If she keeps making noise, it could affect our government negotiations. Joseph stared at the Seattle traffic, considering options. Sloan had declared war using the only weapon she had, his reputation. She couldn't touch his money legally, so she was trying to damage his business socially. It was elegant in its way. Also stupid. Set up a meeting with Margaret Chun, Joseph said. We're going to end this. The lawsuit papers were delivered to Sloan's apartment on a Thursday morning in May. Joseph knew because Margaret Chun called to confirm service. Defamation, interference with business relations, and harassment, Margaret said. We're asking for damages plus an injunction preventing her from contacting your clients or associates. How much in damages? $2 million. It'll never hold up, but it send a message. What kind of message? That you have expensive lawyers and very little patience. By Friday afternoon, Sloan was calling Joseph's phone every hour. He didn't answer. Instead, he forwarded the calls to Margaret Chen's office, where a paralegal would politely explain that all communication needed to go through legal counsel on Monday. Sloan's lawyer called Margaret directly. My client wants to settle, he told her. For what terms? Mutual non-disclosure. She stops talking about Mr. Lakewood's business. He drops the lawsuit. Margaret relayed the offer to Joseph. They were sitting in her Seattle office, reviewing contract for the new corporate structure he'd established with Lena. Counteroffer, Joseph said. She signs a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement, acknowledges that her claims were false, and issues written apologies to every client she contacted. In exchange, I won't pursue damages. That's not a settlement, Joseph. That's unconditional surrender. Those are my terms. Margaret made the call. Sloan's lawyer asked for 24 hours to consider. The answer came back Tuesday morning. No deal. She wants to fight, Margaret told Joseph. Her lawyer thinks they can claim emotional distress, argue that the divorce proceedings were traumatic and affected her judgment. Let them argue. This could get expensive. I can afford expensive. Joseph had Margaret file additional motions. Requests for financial records, documentation of Sloan's spending patterns, phone records showing the harassment campaign. Discovery would take months and cost Sloan's side a fortune in legal fees. Meanwhile, Joseph returned to business. The government contracts came through 3 agencies signing multi-year deals worth over $1 million annually. Lena hired 2 more developers and began designing implementations for overseas clients. Revenue projections for next year are at $4 million, she told Joseph over lunch. Conservative estimates. What about optimistic estimates? $7 million. Maybe 10 if we can close the European deals. Joseph ordered dessert, something he'd never done in his marriage. Sloan had always been watching her weight, monitoring every calorie, making comments about his portion sizes. Now he ate what he wanted, when he wanted. Any word from your ex? Lena asked, her lawyers trying to negotiate. She's running out of money for legal fees. How much is this costing you? Less than she's costing herself. 2 weeks later, Margaret called with news. She's dropped the harassment campaign. No more calls to clients, no more social media posts about the business. Her lawyer says she's prepared to sign a limited non-disclosure agreement. Not interested. Joseph, she's essentially surrendering. This is what victory looks like. Victory looks like her admitting she lied. That's not going to happen. Then we continue. Margaret sighed. I have to advise you that this is getting into spite territory. From a legal standpoint, you've already won. From a business standpoint, I haven't. Every day her accusations are still out there is another day potential clients might have doubts. So what's the end game? Joseph looked out Margaret's window at Elliott Bay. A container ship was moving slowly toward the port, loaded with cargo from around the world. International commerce flowing through systems and logistics networks, much of it managed by software he'd written. The end game is consequences, he said. Real ones. He instructed Margaret to increase the pressure. More depositions, more document requests, more legal costs for Sloane's side. Within a month, her lawyer withdrew from the case, citing unpaid fees. Sloane was forced to represent herself in proceedings that grew more complex each week. In July, Joseph received a call from Tanner Briggs, Sloane's former supervisor at the insurance office. "I thought you should know," Tanner said. "Sloane's been terminated." "For what?" "Multiple issues. Excessive personal calls during work hours, using company resources for personal business, and what HR called disruptive behavior toward colleagues." Joseph said nothing. "Look," Tanner continued, "I don't know what's going on between you two, but she's been intense lately. Talking constantly about the divorce, about legal strategies, about how she's going to make you pay. It was affecting the whole office. I appreciate you letting me know. She's struggling, Joseph. I thought maybe you could talk to her, help her figure out her next steps." Joseph hung up without responding. He had no interest in Sloane's next steps. He was focused on his own. Joseph learned about Sloane and Declan's breakup through a friend of a friend who posted about it on social media. The details were messy: a fight in a restaurant, accusations of financial fraud, Declan leaving Sloane with maxed-out credit cards and unpaid bills. He felt nothing reading the news. No satisfaction, no pity, just the mild interest he might have in a news story about strangers. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Can we please talk? I need to explain things to you." Joseph blocked the number and returned to his work. By August, L&LIP Holdings had grown into something that required real management. Joseph rented proper office space in downtown Seattle, hired an administrative assistant, and began interviewing for senior developer positions. Revenue was tracking towards $6 million for the year, with next year's contracts already pushing that toward 8 figures. "We need to start thinking about acquisition targets," Lena said during their weekly strategy meeting. "Smaller competitors, complementary technologies, maybe some talent acquisitions." Joseph reviewed the list she'd prepared. Companies with good code, but poor business models. Developers with valuable patents, but no marketing strategy. The software industry was full of brilliant people who couldn't build sustainable businesses. "This one," he said, pointing to a firm in Portland. "What do they do?" "Supply chain optimization for mid-sized retailers. Good technology, but they're hemorrhaging cash. We could buy their IP and client base for maybe $2 million. "What's their annual revenue?" "About $400,000. "Declining." Joseph made a note. Set up a meeting. The Portland acquisition closed in September. Joseph paid $1.8 million for assets worth twice that and absorbed 6 new clients who immediately upgraded to LNL's more sophisticated platform. It was his first major business purchase, and the process felt surprisingly natural. "You're getting good at this," Lena observed. "At what?" "Seeing value where others see problems." Joseph shrugged. "I've had practice." His personal life remained deliberately simple. He'd bought a house in Capitol Hill, nothing ostentatious, but comfortable, with a real office and a view of the water. He drove a reliable car, ate at good restaurants, and spent money on experiences rather than status symbols. Sometimes he ran into people from Boise who'd known him and Sloane. They asked careful questions about the divorce, the move to Seattle, his work. Joseph's answers were polite and uninformative. He let them draw their own conclusions. In October, his email system flagged a message that had bypassed his spam filters. Sloane's name in the center field. He almost deleted it, then decided to read it instead. "Joseph, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to say this. I was wrong about everything. Wrong about you. Wrong about what mattered. Wrong about what I wanted from life. I see that now. I see what I threw away because I was too stupid and selfish to recognize what I had. That I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect anything from you. But I need you to know that I understand now. You were building something real while I was chasing fantasies. You were the man I claimed to want, but I was too blind to see it. I hope you're happy. I hope you find someone who deserves what I was too foolish to value, that I'm sorry for everything. Joseph read the message twice, then moved it to his trash folder. He had a conference call with potential clients in Germany in 20 minutes, in preparation to finish. Outside his office window, Seattle's skyline gleamed in rare October sunshine. The city hummed with commerce, technology, and ambition, all the things Sloan had claimed to want, all the things she'd left him to find elsewhere. She'd been right about one thing. He was happy. Not because of her absence, but because of what her absence had allowed him to become. The irony revealed itself in November, during Joseph's review of L&L's investment portfolio. Lena had recommended diversifying their holdings beyond real estate and government bonds. Their financial advisor suggested taking equity positions in promising tech companies. One of the companies on the list was CloudFrame Solutions, a startup developing customer service platforms for mid-sized businesses. Good management, solid technology, reasonable valuation. Joseph approved a $300,000 investment for a 12% stake. He forgot about CloudFrame until December, when their quarterly report arrived in his email. The company was growing steadily, had landed several major contracts, and was hiring aggressively. Attached was a list of new employees. Sloan Merritt was listed as a customer service representative, level 1. Joseph stared at the name on his screen for a long moment. Then he called CloudFrame CEO, a sharp woman named Rita Vasquez who'd impressed him during the investment negotiations. Joseph, Rita said warmly, "Good to hear from you. Are you calling about the quarterly numbers?" "Partially. I noticed you've been hiring, expanding fast. We landed that contract with the retail consortium I mentioned. Had to bring on 15 new people just to handle the volume. Anyone interesting in the new batch? A few standouts. Why? Do you know someone looking for work?" "Actually, I might know one of your recent hires." "Sloan Merritt?" "Merritt. Yes, she started in October. Customer service. Hard worker. Shows up on time. Handles difficult customers well." "Why?" Joseph chose his words carefully. "We were married. Divorced last year." Rita was quiet for a moment. "I see. Is that going to be a problem?" "Not for me. I'm just curious how she's doing. Honestly, she seems like she's been through something difficult. Very focused on the job. Doesn't socialize much with the other employees. Professional, but, I don't know, like she's starting over." Joseph thanked Rita and hung up. He sat in his office, considering the strange mathematics of consequence. Sloan was now working for minimum wage at a company he partially owned. Her paycheck was funded, in small part, by his investment dollars. IT wasn't revenge. He'd had nothing to do with her hiring. It was just the way systems connected, the way money flowed through the economy, the way power accumulated in unexpected places that he decided not to interfere. Sloan needed the job, and by all accounts, she was doing it well. Joseph had no interest in making her life harder than it already was, but he also felt no obligation to make it easier. The next week, CloudFrame's management sent an email to all investors. They were expanding their Seattle operations and looking for office space. Would Mr. Lakewood be interested in discussing a partnership arrangement? Joseph forwarded the email to Lena with a simple note. Thoughts? Her response was immediate. Synergies could be interesting. They handle customer service. We handle back-end systems. Want me to set up a meeting? Joseph wrote back. Let me think about it. He spent the afternoon walking through Pike Place Market, considering options. CloudFrame was a good company with smart leadership. A partnership could benefit both organizations. The fact that Sloan worked there was irrelevant to the business case, or it could be the most relevant factor of all. By evening, Joseph had made his decision. He called Rita Vasquez directly. "I've been thinking about your expansion plans," he said. "L&L might be interested in a deeper partnership. Strategic alliance, shared resources, maybe some joint technology development." "That sounds promising. What did you have in mind? Why don't you come to Seattle next week? I'll show you our operation. We can discuss possibilities." Rita agreed enthusiastically. Joseph hung up and leaned back in his chair. Whatever happened next would be purely business. The fact that it would also demonstrate to Sloan exactly how far she'd fallen was simply an interesting side effect. The partnership meeting with CloudFrame took place in L&L's conference room on a gray December morning. Rita Vasquez brought her CTO and head of operations. Joseph attended with Lena and their newly hired business development director. The discussions went well. CloudFrame's customer service platform could integrate seamlessly with LNL's logistics software, creating comprehensive solutions for enterprise clients. The companies could share resources, cross-train employees, and bid jointly on larger contracts. This could be a game changer for both of us, Rita said as they wrapped up. When can we start pilot programs? Immediately, Joseph replied. Lena will coordinate the technical integration. I'd like to begin with 3 of our current clients who've been asking for better customer service options. As Rita packed her materials, she paused. I should probably mention this earlier, but given your personal connection to one of our employees, I want to make sure there are no conflicts of interest. What kind of conflicts? Well, if we're partnering closely, there might be situations where you'd have indirect oversight of Sloan's work. I want to make sure everyone's comfortable with that arrangement. Joseph considered this. Is she performing well? Very well. She's actually exceeded our performance metrics 3 months running. Then I don't see a conflict. Business is business. Rita nodded approvingly. I like that attitude. After the CloudFrame team left, Lena stayed behind to discuss implementation details. You know she's going to figure out eventually, Lena said. When she sees LNL's name on partnership announcements, on company emails, on her indirect chain of command. I know. How do you think she'll react? Joseph shrugged. That's her problem to solve. The realization came to Sloan 2 weeks later, according to Rita Vasquez, who called Joseph to discuss it. She asked to speak with me privately, Rita said. Wanted to know about the partnership announcement. When I mentioned LNL IP Holdings, she went completely white. What did she say? She asked if Joseph Lakewood was involved. I confirmed that you're our primary partner and a significant investor in CloudFrame. She was quiet for a long time, then asked if this would affect her job security. What did you tell her? The truth. That her employment has nothing to do with company partnerships. Her performance speaks for itself. Joseph appreciated Rita's professionalism. How is she handling it? Quietly. She's still doing good work, but she's subdued. I think the reality of the situation is sinking in. Joseph thanked Rita and returned to his work. That evening, he found an email from Sloan in his personal account. The subject line read, I understand now. Joseph, I won't pretend this isn't the strangest thing that's ever happened to me. Working for a company you partially own, taking direction from managers who ultimately answer to systems you built. It's like living inside the consequences of every mistake I made that I want you to know that I'm grateful for the job. I know you could have me fired with a phone call, but you haven't. I don't know if that's kindness or indifference, but either way, I appreciate it that I see what you built now. I see what I walked away from, what I was too selfish and stupid to recognize. You weren't just a man I married, you were the man I claimed to want to marry. Someone successful, ambitious, building something meaningful. I was just too blind to see it that I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect anything from you. But I need you to know that I finally understand what I lost. Not just you, but the future we could have had together. I hope you're proud of what you've accomplished. You should be. Joseph deleted the email without replying. The next morning, Lena knocked on his office door with an unusual expression. We received an interesting scholarship application, she said. Remember that program you set up for first-generation college students? Joseph nodded. He'd established the scholarship fund the previous month, administered through the University of Washington. Full tuition for students from low-income families pursuing technology degrees. It was funded anonymously through one of LNL's charitable entities. One of the essays caught my attention, Lena continued. She handed him a folder. Might want to read it. The application was from Kevin Merritt, age 18, from Boise, Idaho. The essay described his family situation. A single mother working 2 jobs to support them after a difficult divorce. His determination to study computer science despite financial obstacles. His dream of building software that could help small businesses compete with larger corporations. The writing was intelligent, humble, and genuinely moving. Kevin Merritt was clearly a young man with potential who deserved a chance. He was also Sloan's son from her first marriage. Joseph read the essay twice. Kevin had written about his mother's struggles with genuine compassion, describing her as someone who'd made mistakes, but was working hard to rebuild her life. There was no bitterness, no self-pity, just gratitude for her sacrifices and determination to make the most of his opportunities. "What's your recommendation?" Joseph asked Lena. "Purely based on merit?" He's exactly the kind of student this program was designed to help. Strong academics, clear goals, compelling personal story, and the personal connection. That's not relevant to his qualifications. Joseph set down the application and walked to his window. Seattle's afternoon traffic moved in predictable patterns below people going about their lives, making decisions, facing consequences, finding new paths forward. "Approve the scholarship," he said. "Full funding for 4 years, plus a stipend for living expenses." "Any conditions?" Joseph thought for a moment. "The usual ones. Maintain good grades, submit annual progress reports, participate in mentorship programs, and make sure it's processed through the anonymous fund. You should never know where the money came from." Lena nodded and left to process the paperwork. Joseph returned to his desk and opened his laptop. He had calls to make, contracts to review, an empire to run. Outside, the Seattle sky was beginning to clear. Shafts of sunlight cut through the clouds, illuminating the water and the mountains beyond. Joseph worked steadily through the afternoon, building something that would last long after everyone forgot the woman who'd once shared his name. The scholarship notification would reach Kevin Merritt in 3 weeks. His mother would probably cry when she heard the news, tears of relief, gratitude, and maybe something else. The recognition that opportunities could emerge from unexpected places, that the world sometimes offered second chances to those who needed them most. Joseph would never meet Kevin Merritt, would never know how his education progressed or what he accomplished with his degree. That wasn't the point. The point was that consequences flowed both ways. Sometimes they destroyed, and sometimes they created, sometimes they punished, and sometimes they rescued. Joseph Lakewood had learned to manage both kind with equal precision. He was no longer the man Sloan had married, or the man she'd left, or even the man she now feared. He was something else entirely, someone who understood that the greatest victories were often invisible, and that true power lay not in forgiveness, but in the ability to choose when mercy served a larger purpose. The weight of her words had once crushed him. Now, there were just echoes, growing fainter with each passing day. Joseph closed his laptop and prepared to go home.